On screen, they were family. Off screen, they were anything but. What began as a blockbuster pairing.
For years, audiences believed the story was simple. Vin Diesel and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson were brothers, united by horsepower, loyalty, and the billion-dollar empire of Fast and Furious. They called it family, and Hollywood sold it as gospel truth. But off-screen, whispers told a different story. Tensions brewing on set, conflicting statements in interviews, social media posts laced with subtle jabs. In 2016, The Rock made headlines when he referred to certain co-stars as candy asses on Instagram, a phrase that fans and journalists quickly linked to Diesel. The carefully built image of brotherhood began to fracture. The contrast was striking. On red carpets, they stood side by side, smiling for cameras. Yet in production halls, sources described a rivalry of egos, a clash over control, and even separate shooting schedules designed to keep them apart. Was this the same family the franchise endlessly celebrated, or a staged illusion crafted to sell tickets? This is not just the story of two men. It is the tale of how Hollywood manufactures friendship, markets harmony, and hides conflict, until the mask finally slips. So we must ask, was the brotherhood between Vin Diesel and The Rock ever real, or nothing more than a Hollywood act? When Dwayne Johnson joined the Fast and Furious family in 2011 with Fast 5, it was framed as the ultimate union. Vin Diesel, the franchise's original cornerstone, was cast as the stoic leader, while Johnson entered as Luke Hobbs, a lawman so fierce he could rival Dominic Toretto's iron will. On screen, their chemistry was electric. Sweat, muscle, and mutual respect forged in fire. The film grossed over $626 million worldwide, revitalizing a franchise that had shown signs of fatigue. Hollywood took notice. From that point forward, the marketing machine leaned heavily on their supposed bond. Universal Pictures didn't just sell cars and stunts, they sold family. Press tours positioned Diesel and Johnson as two halves of the same coin, brothers locked in cinematic destiny. At the 2011 premiere in Rio de Janeiro, countless photographs showed them shoulder to shoulder, Diesel often referring to Johnson as his younger brother in interviews with outlets like MTV News, 2011. The message was clear. The unity was real, both on screen and off. As the saga expanded with Fast and Furious 6 in 2013 and Furious 7 in 2015, the narrative intensified. Red carpets became a stage for carefully choreographed camaraderie. Matching tuxedos, broad smiles, arms slung across shoulders, every image fed into the mythology. In magazine spreads such as Entertainment Weekly's 2015 summer blockbuster issue, the two men were featured together, photographed mid-laugh, embodying the power of fraternity. Talk show appearances doubled down, with Johnson praising the cast as a true family on Jimmy Kimmel Live, 2015, while Diesel declared that Fast was a brotherhood like no other. The illusion wasn't accidental. PR teams deliberately booked them as a pair, often requiring joint interviews. Stylists coordinated outfits for a seamless look, leather jackets, tailored suits, or casual t-shirts that mirrored one another. Behind the scenes, Universal recognized the value of not just selling a franchise but selling friendship. By presenting Diesel and Johnson as inseparable allies, the studio extended the brand identity of Fast Family into reality. Audiences embraced the image wholeheartedly. Fans began treating the duo as symbolic of the franchise's theme, loyalty above all. Hashtags like Fast Family and Brothers in Arms circulated widely on Twitter during the release of Furious 7, especially after Paul Walker's tragic death in 2013. The solidarity between cast members was highlighted as a beacon of strength in interviews and promotional campaigns. In this atmosphere, the Vin-Rock relationship appeared unshakable, even sacred, and the results were undeniable. Furious 7 shattered expectations, grossing $1.5 billion globally. Diesel, standing at Walker's memorial premiere, called the cast "family forever." Johnson echoed the sentiment in a 2015 Instagram post, writing, "We don't just make movies, we build legacies." These public affirmations crystallized the image. To the world, Vin Diesel and The Rock weren't just co-stars. They were brothers, icons of loyalty, carrying a billion-dollar narrative on their shoulders. But as the public narrative grew stronger, the private tensions began to fester. The constant repetition of family hardened into accepted truth, a truth so powerful that fans and press overlooked subtle contradictions. Every photograph, every soundbite, every carefully staged moment seemed to cement their bond. Yet, as history would soon reveal, illusion does not last forever. Behind the smiles and rehearsed camaraderie, another story was already unfolding, one of rivalry, ego, and power. The cracks, though invisible at first, were waiting to surface. On the surface, the image of brotherhood remained intact through the mid-2010s. But insiders began to notice subtle patterns: absences, scheduling conflicts, and a shift in how the two stars interacted in public. What had once been celebrated as an indestructible bond was now beginning to show strain. At the heart of the issue lay a classic Hollywood conflict: power and control. Vin Diesel, not only the face of Fast and Furious, but also a producer since Fast and Furious 4, 2009, held creative sway. He had influence over scripts, tone, even the editing room. According to a 2016 report from The Hollywood Reporter, Diesel's producer credit gave him significant leverage in shaping scenes. By contrast, Dwayne Johnson was a global superstar whose brand thrived on discipline, punctuality, and maximum efficiency. For Johnson, arriving on set late or extending production was unprofessional. For Diesel, as some crew members later revealed, lateness was almost a ritual. These opposing work styles inevitably collided. Money further complicated matters. In Furious 7, 2015, Diesel reportedly earned a base salary exceeding $20 million, while Johnson's salary was closer to $15 million, despite his rising international star power after hits like San Andreas, 2015, and Central Intelligence, 2016. Though the figures were never officially confirmed, trade outlets like Variety and Forbes highlighted the growing pay gap, fueling speculation that resentment was brewing beneath the surface. Then came the pattern of absence. Fans began noticing that press tours grew increasingly segmented. During the promotional campaign for The Fate of the Furious in 2017, Diesel and Johnson rarely appeared together in interviews. In group photos, their distance was palpable. In fact, in the official CinemaCon 2017 panel, the two were never seen sharing the stage. Observers questioned, was this coincidence or careful choreography to keep them apart? Social media provided more evidence. While the cast frequently tagged one another in celebratory posts, Johnson's Instagram in 2016 began to noticeably exclude Diesel. Posts highlighting family often included Tyrese Gibson, Ludacris, or Jason Statham, but not Vin. The silence was deafening. Diesel, conversely, often maintained the family rhetoric publicly, but rarely mentioned Johnson directly after 2015. For a fanbase that was trained to see unity, the omission spoke volumes. By mid-2016, tension had become impossible to hide. During the final weeks of shooting The Fate of the Furious, Johnson posted a now infamous message to Instagram. "My female co-stars are always amazing and I love them. My male co-stars, however, are a different story. Some conduct themselves as stand-up men and true professionals, while others don't. The ones that don't are too chicken-sage to do anything about it anyway. Candy asses." Though he didn't name names, multiple outlets, including Deadline and People magazine confirmed that the post was aimed squarely at Diesel. From there, the narrative shifted. What once looked like minor personality differences now seemed like deep fractures. Reports emerged of separate shooting schedules. According to Rolling Stone 2018, scenes featuring Hobbs and Toretto were filmed with deliberate separation, avoiding overlapping call times. This was not just rumor. Crew members confirmed the production had to restructure to accommodate the conflict. Behind the cameras, alliances formed. Tyrese Gibson sided publicly with Diesel, criticizing Johnson for focusing on his spin-off Hobbs and Shaw rather than the core saga. Johnson, meanwhile, emphasized his commitment to professionalism and the fans, distancing himself from what he viewed as ego-driven drama. The cast, once united under the Fast Family banner, was now split. By loyalty lines, the evidence was undeniable. Pay discrepancies, conflicting work styles, social media silences, and carefully managed appearances painted a picture of friendship unraveling. The narrative of brotherhood had morphed into a tale of rivalry. The cracks were no longer whispers. They were visible, structural, and impossible to ignore. And soon, those cracks would explode into one of Hollywood's most publicized feuds. By 2016, the whispers had already become difficult to ignore. But in Hollywood, it often takes one definitive moment, a spark in public view, to shatter the carefully constructed illusion. For Vin Diesel and Dwayne Johnson, that spark came, in the form of a social media post that would go down in franchise history. In August 2016, while wrapping up filming for The Fate of the Furious, Fast and Furious 8, Johnson unleashed his frustration on Instagram. The post, later deleted but widely reported by outlets like People magazine and Deadline, accused unnamed male co-stars of being unprofessional candy asses. Fans immediately began to speculate, and industry insiders confirmed what many already suspected. The target was Vin Diesel. Overnight, the world saw what insiders had long whispered. The Fast family was fractured. The fallout was immediate. Tabloids ran with headlines like Fast Feud, Diesel vs. The Rock, Entertainment Weekly 2016, and Fast and Furious stars in furious fight, The Guardian 2016. Diesel responded cryptically on Facebook, thanking fans but insisting there would be clarity in time. Instead of calming speculation, his vague words only inflamed curiosity. For the first time, the family image was no longer untouchable. It was under siege. As promotional campaigns for the film rolled out, the tension became impossible to mask. At the CinemaCon presentation in March 2017, Johnson and Diesel were kept apart, each giving separate statements about the franchise's future. Observers noted how Universal carefully arranged photo ops to avoid pairing them. What should have been a celebration of the 8th installment felt like a diplomatic balancing act. The scandal escalated when Diesel, in a 2017 interview with USA Today, attempted to frame the feud as a misunderstanding, calling Johnson Uncle Dwayne, and claiming that disagreements were simply creative differences. But Johnson, in an interview with Rolling Stone 2018, painted a sharper picture. "We were not in any scenes together. That was not by accident." His statement confirmed what had been rumored all along. The two megastars had deliberately been separated on set. The press seized on every word. Hashtags like Team Diesel and Team Rock trended on Twitter. Fans dissected behind-the-scenes footage, looking for signs of friction. Even memes began to circulate, contrasting Diesel's family mantra with Johnson's iron discipline. The illusion of unity had cracked wide open. Then came the ultimate fracture, Johnson's spin-off project. In 2017, Universal announced Fast and Furious Presents Hobbs and Shaw, starring Johnson and Jason Statham. The move enraged Tyrese Gibson, who accused Johnson of breaking up the family in a now viral Instagram rant. Diesel remained mostly silent, But insiders told The Hollywood Reporter that he viewed the spin-off as a betrayal, stealing momentum from the core saga. The feud was no longer just personal. It had corporate and financial stakes. The scandal reached peak visibility in 2019 when Hobbs and Shaw premiered. While it grossed a solid $760 million worldwide, Diesel pointedly downplayed its success. Meanwhile, Johnson admitted in interviews that he had no plans to return for Fast 9. What had begun as a subtle clash of egos had become an open rupture, acknowledged in headlines, interviews, and the very structure of the franchise itself. Perhaps the most telling moment came in 2021, when Diesel gave an interview to Men's Health claiming that his tension with Johnson was a result of using tough love to extract the best performance. He described himself as a big brother guiding Johnson. The Rock responded publicly, laughing off the statement in an October 2021 Vanity Fair interview, saying, "I laughed, and I laughed hard. I think everyone had a laugh at that. I'll leave it at that." The mocking tone underscored the depth of the rift. The mask had shattered. What once was a billion-dollar story of unity now stood exposed as a battleground of egos, control, and corporate interests. The Fast family had sold an illusion for years, but by the late 2010s, the truth was playing out for the world to see, not in whispered rumors, but in bold headlines and viral posts. By the time The Fate of the Furious premiered in April 2017, the feud was no longer a background rumor. It was the defining storyline surrounding the film. Ironically, the movie itself set box office records, debuting to $532 million globally in its opening weekend, one of the strongest in cinema history. Yet in interviews, journalists spent as much time asking about Diesel and Johnson's relationship as they did about car chases. The personal conflict had become inseparable from the franchise's identity. For Universal, the scandal posed both a threat and an opportunity. On one hand, the family narrative had been the emotional backbone of the saga. Cracks in that illusion risked alienating audiences. On the other, the very spectacle of conflict, the perception that Diesel and Johnson couldn't even share a room, generated publicity. As one Variety columnist noted in 2017, the off-screen feud is now the biggest plot twist in the series. The cast itself was drawn into the crossfire. Tyrese Gibson's public criticism of Johnson, accusing him of delaying Fast 9 with Hobbs and Shaw, turned social media into a battleground. Michelle Rodriguez, in a more measured tone, emphasized the importance of keeping the core family intact, subtly distancing herself from the feud. Jason Statham, meanwhile, benefited from Johnson's spin-off, positioning himself as a new franchise pillar. Alliances formed, and silence from certain cast members spoke volumes. For Diesel, the fallout struck at the heart of his identity. He had long styled himself as the patriarch of Fast and Furious, the guardian of family. The perception that his leadership was being challenged by Johnson's discipline and global stardom unsettled his image. Interviews in 2017 and 2018 revealed Diesel constantly reiterating that family always comes first, a refrain that sounded less like celebration and more like self-defense. Johnson, by contrast, emerged with his brand largely intact, while some accused him of undermining the saga. His reputation for professionalism resonated with fans. Hobbs and Shaw's solid box office in 2019 proved he could carry a spin-off, even if it fell short of the billion-dollar heights of the main series. Critics praised his chemistry with Jason Statham, suggesting Johnson had found a way to extend his action star legacy beyond Diesel's shadow. But the cost was real. By 2020, Johnson confirmed he would not return for Fast 9. The absence was glaring, for a franchise that had sold itself on unity. Explaining why Hobbs was missing required narrative gymnastics. The film leaned into new villains and expanded family trees, but fans noticed what wasn't there. As one New York Times critic wrote, in June 2021, "The loudest sound in Fast 9 is the silence where the Rock should be." The division also influenced how the saga was marketed. Posters and trailers for Fast 9 spotlighted Diesel, John Cena, and the returning ensemble, but avoided even indirect references to Hobbs. Johnson, meanwhile, filled the void with his own projects: Jumanji, The Next Level, 2019, Red Notice, 2021, and Black Adam, 2022, proving his career thrived independently. The franchise itself faced diminishing returns. F9 earned $726 million worldwide, impressive during the pandemic era, but below the billion-dollar heights of Furious 7 and The Fate of the Furious. Analysts pointed to audience fatigue, but also to the absence of the Hobbs character as a symbolic loss. Without Johnson's presence, the so-called family felt incomplete. By the early 2020s, the fallout had crystallized into two competing truths. Diesel maintained control over the core saga, while Johnson secured his independence. Each emerged with victories, but the cost was the very illusion that had carried them. What had been marketed as brotherhood was now remembered as rivalry. The absence, ironically, had become its own character, an unspoken reminder of how fragile Hollywood's packaged friendships can be. And as whispers of a potential reconciliation circulated, fans wondered, would the feud define the ending of Fast and Furious, or would business bring the brothers together one last time? When the dust settled, the feud between Vin Diesel and Dwayne Johnson left behind more than bruised egos and fractured schedules. It created a case study in how Hollywood manufactures intimacy, markets harmony, and navigates the consequences when the illusion collapses. The Fast and Furious saga had long presented itself as more than an action franchise. It was branded as a cultural statement: loyalty, family, and unity against all odds. In this context, Diesel and Johnson were not merely actors. They were symbols. Their public image as brothers reinforced the mythology that audiences bought into. But once the feud surfaced, fans were forced to confront a harsher truth: that the narrative of family had been carefully curated, not naturally lived. Media scholars began pointing to the feud as an example of performative friendship. As The Atlantic noted in 2021, celebrity culture increasingly relies on the packaging of personal bonds as part of the product. Co-stars are presented not just as colleagues, but as confidants, with the implication that their chemistry is inseparable from the art they produce. When Diesel and Johnson's conflict became public, it exposed the seams of that packaging. Audiences were reminded that what looks genuine on screen can be a contractual performance off-screen. The feud also shifted how fans approached the franchise. Once, hashtags like "We're Fast Family" reflected uncritical acceptance of the myth. After 2016, online discourse grew sharper, with Reddit threads and YouTube essays dissecting every interview, comparing timelines, and questioning studio spin. As Rolling Stone observed in 2019, the audience is no longer passive. They are now part-time detectives, mapping drama with the same intensity as plot lines. The Diesel-Johnson feud didn't just entertain, it educated fans in media literacy. For Hollywood, the saga reinforced a double-edged truth. Manufactured friendships can elevate a franchise, but when exposed as false, they can also overshadow the work itself. The feud never derailed box office success, but it permanently altered the tone of discussion. Instead of celebrating family, critics began to frame the series as a study in ego management. Headlines like "Fast Family Feud" became shorthand for the tension between myth and reality. And yet, there is another layer of legacy, one of resilience. Despite their feud, both Diesel and Johnson maintained flourishing careers. Diesel continued to anchor the mainline saga, guiding it toward its final chapters. Johnson expanded into spin-offs and new franchises, cementing his reputation as one of the most bankable stars of the 21st century. The feud did not destroy them. Instead, it revealed the adaptability of modern celebrity, the ability to weaponize even conflict as a form of branding. In broader cultural terms, the Diesel-Johnson story highlighted the precarious nature of celebrity brotherhoods. Hollywood history is filled with similar tales, from Betty Davis versus Joan Crawford in the 1960s to more recent tensions like Sarah Jessica Parker versus Kim Cattrall. Each feud reminds audiences that what they see is a crafted image, not a transparent reality. The Diesel-Johnson rift, however, resonated differently because it clashed so directly with the central theme of the films: family. As the saga now moves toward its conclusion, speculation remains about whether the two will reunite on screen. Would business interests override personal grievances? Or will the franchise end with the silence intact? That open question itself has become part of the legacy. In the end, the story of Vin Diesel and The Rock is not just about two men who couldn't get along. It is about how modern Hollywood sells intimacy, how fans learn to spot the stitches, and how myths of unity can unravel in public view. The diorama of brotherhood that once fueled a billion-dollar franchise now serves as a cultural cautionary tale. The legacy is clear. We still love the movies, but we will never look at family and Fast and Furious the same way again. In the end, the feud between Vin Diesel and Dwayne Johnson revealed something larger than a clash of egos. It pulled back the curtain on Hollywood's ability to package friendship as part of its product, and the consequences when that illusion crumbles in public view. For fans, the question lingers: was the brotherhood ever real, or was it always a performance designed to sell tickets? The truth may never be fully known, but what is certain is that this saga changed how we see the idea of family in film. It taught us that even the strongest on-screen bonds can mask fragile realities behind the scenes, so we leave it to you. Do you believe Vin Diesel and The Rock will ever reconcile? Or is this one Hollywood friendship too broken to repair? Like, share, and subscribe for more untold Hollywood stories. And don't forget to ring the bell, because the real drama is always just beneath the surface.